Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Home in Progress, sponsored by RepcoLite Paints and Benjamin Moore. I'm Dan Hansen, and today we're going to cover a fair amount of ground on the second half of the show. We're going to take a deep dive into Benjamin Moore's new color of the year. It's a brown, and I've had a lot of people, or a number of people, let's not overplay it. I've had a number of people express how shall we say it? Disappointment. Let's use that word. They've expressed disappointment at the choice. They just can't believe that brown is the color of the year. Well, I know that browns aren't necessarily the flashiest of colors, but I do think there's a lot going on with this color pick, and it is pretty interesting. In fact, one of the ideas, I'll just spill the beans a little bit, I'll get it more into it later, but one of the ideas behind the color choice this year is how people are just sick of trends. You know, new trends crop up all the time, and we're sick of trying to keep up with them. We're sick of chasing trends. People don't want to repaint their homes every single year. And so Benjamin Moore is leaning into that with a color that has staying power. You know, it's literally in their mind when they pick this color, a color that you can live with for several years, maybe 5, maybe even more years without having to repaint. So that's their idea. Does the new color that they picked deliver on that? We're going to get into all of that and, dissect it and figure out how they did. That's coming up later. We'll also be talking about how you can get entered into a contest to win one of 4 $250 RepcoLite gift certificates. If you don't want it, I've had a number of people say, well, I'm not doing any painting, so that doesn't help me. Christmas is coming, right? And who wouldn't love to give away a $250 gift certificate for paint for somebody's house? It's a great gift, and it didn't cost you anything. And you look amazing when you give something like that. So everybody's got somebody in their life who's going to be painting. So I think this contest really applies to everybody. It's super easy to get entered. We'll talk about that at the end. But right now, I want to talk about something that happened to me last week, not this past, but the one before. It was not terribly fun. Here's what happened. I'm sleeping peacefully one of these days. I don't remember which day it was. Doesn't matter. Sleeping peacefully, and then my son wakes me up at 5:30 or so. I think it was even earlier than that, to let me know that there's water all over the floor in the basement. He'd already cleaned it up as well as he could, but he wanted me to know. So that was nice. Now, fortunately, his clothes, which had been strewn all about the room, acted like towels. And they actually stopped the advancing water and soaked it up. So being messy actually saved the day this time. It's nice that it finally has paid off for him. Yeah, it paid off in a big way, saved him a lot of work because it kept that water localized. I'm sure that it will probably mean that the floor will forever be strewn with clothes because you never know when water's going to come pouring in. Anyway, we assessed the situation, discovered what the problem was, which I'll explain later, and then we went about our day. Now later, because of that water, coming in, because it had happened, I started to get a little antsy. It's how I am. I think through all these different terrible scenarios and assume that most of them are probably going to happen. So I start to think that water is maybe coming in everywhere. Why didn't I look everywhere to make sure? Why did I think it was just this one spot? So I go through the whole house, all through the basement, and I find out that everything is good. It was just the one spot. So I'm relieved, right? Taking a breath of fresh air, feeling that weight off my back. And then, because water is on my mind, I start thinking about the roof. Maybe the roof is leaking. Long story short, I'll explain more about this later, but long story short, I crawl into the attic. I drive myself so crazy that I end up just crawling into the attic to determine that everything is fine so I can go about my day peacefully. And lo and behold, I find out the roof really is leaking in a couple of spots. Well, once I get over that initial pity party moment, I started thinking about all of you out there. Now, it's not fun finding a roof leak, but it's way worse when you don't find one that's already there. So I want to talk today about some preventative maintenance that most of us can do. And I'm going to focus on 6 realistic steps that you can tackle this fall, today, this weekend. Some you can do safely by yourself. Some you may want a pro for. You'll figure it out as we go. Let's start here. Clean the gutters and the downspouts. This is the first one. And it's one of those projects that gets talked about all the time. I talk about it a bunch. Everybody talks about it a bunch. But it's important, and it's relatively straightforward. And really, this time of year, you probably should be doing this periodically because more and more leaves are dropping every single day. All right, this is important to do, the cleaning the gutters. I said it's important. Why is it important? It's important because when the gutters clog up with leaves and debris, water backs up and can't be channeled away from your home. That could end up dumping water right at your foundation where it could find a way in, but it can also back up and seep under your shingles, run along your fascia and get into your roofing system. Now, over time, this can lead to leaks, it can lead to rot, it can lead to other problems that you don't want to deal with. So grab a ladder, get somebody to hold the ladder steadily for you, and remove all that gunk. Flush the downspouts with a hose if you need to, whatever you need to do to make sure that water's flowing freely through the system and away from your house. And while you're at it, do yourself a favor. Inspect the gutters and the downspouts to make sure that everything is attached. Make sure it's all hooked together. Make sure it's functioning the way it's supposed to be. I had a downspout get bumped off by a garbage can that we wheeled back into place one day. And then when we got all that rain, it ended up dumping it all right at the foundation of the house, and it found a way into the basement. That's how my problem happened, because it wasn't connected and doing its thing. So check yours. Since you're out there anyway, make sure that they're working. All right, so first thing, clean out those gutters. We say it all the time, but do that. That's going to help you. Second thing, inspect your shingles. Cracked shingles, curled edges, missing granules, lifted corners. All of these things are early warning signs. If shingles fail, water gets under them, into the deck, and eventually into your attic. So give those shingles a once over. And you know the scope of your skills and the slope of your roof. The scope of your skills and the slope of your roof. It's kind of rhymey. That should be easy to remember. Know the scope of your skills and the slope of your roof. What I'm getting at is if you can safely get up there and give them a look, that's ideal. If not, check out what you can from the ground and, use binoculars if you need to. But don't get up there if you're not comfortable or if the slope is too much. But if you can get up there, that's great. Either way, look for missing shingles, cracked shingles, dark patches, and so on. Inspect your shingles. Third thing that you can do, if you're able to get on the roof, give some attention to your chimney flashing, the roof penetrations, anything out there that's penetrating the roof, and specifically vent pipe boots. Now, for me, my roof problem was the chimney. The caulking around the flashing had gotten old and brittle and had chipped away in a few spots, and that gave the water an easy path into the attic. So look that over and make sure the seals are in good shape and are doing their job. And also look for possible entry points for water around the base of the chimney. And then do the same thing for your bathroom fan exhausts and any other roof penetrations. And then finally take a peek at any vent pipe boots. Now, what's a vent pipe boot? Well, it's that rubber or plastic collar, sometimes called a gasket, that's around the pipe sticking out of your roof. The seal where the pipe penetrates your roof. That's the vent pipe boot. And those rubber boots, whatever you want to call them, those gaskets, they can fail with time. They dry out, they can crack, they can lose their seal. And when they fail, water's, of course, got an easy path into the home. Now, usually they're going to last, anywhere from 8 to 15 years, but it never hurts to give them a quick once-over just to make sure they're in good condition and they're doing their job. So look around each vent pipe for cracked rubber collars, separation from the pipe, or gaps, between the boot and the roof surface. Check to make sure that the flashing beneath the collar is properly overlapped by shingles on the uphill side. And if you spot cracked collars, visible gaps, or any other issues, anything that would make you suspect that gasket or that boot is failing, call a pro. They can come out and confirm your diagnosis and do the repair. One other thing, not related to the roof, leaky roofs or anything, but since you're up there anyway, shine a flashlight down those vent pipes. Make sure that they're clear. They're important for your plumbing. And if they're blocked, air can't move through there, and that can actually mess with, draining sinks and all of that. So with all the leaves coming down, just if you can shine a light down there, That at least gives you a quick look to see if anything's, severely blocking it, at least as far as you can see. It's not perfect. You're not diagnosing everything at that point, but you're up there. You might as well take a peek at that. Moving on. While you're on the roof, if you can safely do so, trim any overhanging branches and be sure to clear any organic debris from the roof. All right, first off, the branches. When they're rubbing against the shingles, that can wear shingles down over time, and falling limbs, of course, can punch holes in the roof. So clear the branches away if you can safely do that. Cut them back and take care of those. Secondly, piles of leaves that have settled into, certain pockets on the roof can trap moisture, and they can keep water pooled rather than letting it run off. And all of that gives the water the chance to back up under the shingles. So get those leaves off the roof. All right, step 5, the attic check. And here's the step that saved me from much bigger problems. And I want to back up and explain some of this a little more. I said that I crawled through the attic, and it seems a little insane that water in the basement would make me check the attic. I got to give you the whole story so it makes a little more sense. In my living room, when we moved in years back, there was a small stain on the ceiling where water had previously leaked in around the fireplace. The inspector pointed it out, and whenever I repaint that area, that ceiling, I'm going to have to use a special stain blocking primer to seal it in, and then I'll be done with it. Hopefully forever. But I haven't done that painting yet. It's just not something that I notice. I don't think about it. And I never really even see that spot unless I shine a light up there. The lighting in that room is so bad. And that's a benefit for having that bad lighting in the room. It doesn't expose all these flaws. But anyway, that's why I haven't repainted that ceiling yet. It falls off my radar. I don't even think about it. But every now and then when we get a lot of rain, or something happens, like get water in the basement, which happened because of a lot of rain, I always remember that spot. And then I go and look at it, and I wonder, is it worse? Is it the same as it always used to be? So this happened, multiple times. So I ended up taking pictures of it so that when more rain comes in someday, or more rain happens, I can go and consult these old pictures, and I can reference them and find out if the spot has changed over time. And the only problem with that plan, it's a good plan. The only problem is that my phone runs short on space. And so periodically throughout the year, I have to delete a bunch of stuff. And I always tool through and I find these pictures, and I have no idea why I've taken them. Why do I have pictures of the ceiling? That's stupid. So I delete all those pictures. And then we get a lot of rain. I go looking for the pictures, and they're gone every single time. So I take new ones, and I repeat that. Anyway, I was doing that again this past week, and I finally decided that since it's been a while, maybe I should just crawl in the attic and check. I didn't want to do it, but I couldn't get it out of my head. It just seemed like the thing to do, and so I did it. And when I crawled a little ways in, I immediately spotted damp spots on the underside of the roof decking and in an area around the chimney. What a pain. I was so frustrated. It wasn't bad, but it was bad enough. Now, of course, it's absolutely no fun to get into the attic. It's messy. It's a tight space. It's dark. It's full of who knows what. Who knows what is up there. And you get to try to navigate around an area where there's no real floor, right? It's not fun, but it's still a surefire way to find many, many, many roofing problems. And as sad as I was about finding it, I'm still really happy to know about the problem so I can address it and deal with it before it becomes worse. So get into your attics. That's what I'm getting at. Get into your attics and take a look, especially after we've had some prolonged rain. Now, a quick word about actually getting around and moving around in your attic. If yours is like mine, there's no floor. It's just ceiling joists buried under blown-in insulation. You need to know a few things before you go exploring. First off, if you can, bring a piece of plywood with you. I'm talking like a 2-foot wide, maybe a 3-foot wide piece of 3/4 inch thick plywood that you can lay across a couple of joists. And that can become a mobile platform. You can kneel on it, stand on it, kind of slide it ahead of you as you go. It distributes your weight so you're not bowing the joists and cracking your ceilings below, or worse yet, falling through. Second, use your feet like you're feeling for stepping stones. All right? With all that insulation, you can't see the joist. So probe gently with your foot until you feel solid wood, then commit your weight. Slow, deliberate, no quick movements up there. Or you're going to have a way worse problem than just trying to diagnose a little bit of a leaky roof. Third thing, bring a headlamp, not a flashlight. You need both hands free. You may not think you do, but you will. Promise. I promise you this. I messed this up. And so I'm up there, and I need both hands to kind of balance myself because I didn't have the plywood with me. I should have brought that. I knew right away I should have brought that. But I didn't. I thought I could do it. So I need both hands. So I put the flashlight in my mouth, right? So I can use both hands and kind of brace myself in a couple spots and crawl forward. And then as I'm doing that, I stirred up, looking for the next floor joist, I stirred up a whole bunch of attic insulation, and it ends up in my mouth, right? Because my mouth's open around the flashlight. And then, without even thinking about it, I instantly spit all the insulation out. And of course, that sent the flashlight flying. I spit it straight into the insulation, and I watched it disappear, into all that blown-in insulation. And suddenly everything is pitch black up there. I've got insulation in my mouth. I'm in the middle of this area over, a family room, just trying to find floor joists. I've got no light. It's absolutely terrible. Trying to keep my balance, trying to find my flashlight. Well, it all worked out, obviously. I'm not still up there waiting to be rescued, but I don't want really to send you to that kind of an experience. So get a headlamp. All of that to say get a headlamp. Also, and this is important, wear a hat, a thick hat. There are sharp, rusty nails, sometimes rusty, sticking through the roof deck up there, and, they're just waiting to puncture your head if you stand up too fast. So just be aware of all of that stuff. It's not the most happy environment up there, but it's good to get up there and take a look. If you spot moisture damage or anything else that's concerning up there, it might be worth it to call a pro. And that's actually the last recommendation that I've got. That's step 6, schedule a roof inspection. Now, when I noticed the leaking chimney and a couple other wet areas in the attic, I reached out to Matt Williams from Sheriff Goslin Roofing. Matt's been on the show multiple times, and he drove out and walked me through exactly what was going on. Now, Sheriff Goslin, like a number of other roofing contractors, offers a free inspection. They'll get up there, they'll tell you how long your current roof probably is going to last before it needs replacement. They'll assess any damage or issues that you might be dealing with. They'll talk about fixes and so on. Now, when Matt was up there, we were looking at the spots that I was suspicious of, but he took that investigation way deeper than I did, and he spotted things I never would have caught. One of the leaks was around the chimney flashing. I suspected that one, but a second leak was happening about 5 feet above and to the left of the spot where I thought it was happening. And Matt explained how common that was, how water can travel, and can be really sneaky. It can make you think that the problem is in one spot when it's actually somewhere else. So all that to say, getting a pro to look at the roof is probably a really good idea. I asked Matt what he recommended, and he said that once the roof gets to be, about 15 years old or so, even if your own attic inspections and roof inspections turn up nothing, it's probably a good idea at that point to get somebody out there to give you a free inspection. And from that point on, Matt said he usually would determine if it's a good plan to come out the following year, and do it every year, or to settle into kind of an every other year situation. Either way, the inspection is free, or at least they can be. Make sure you ask about that because they're not all free. Sheriff Goslin has free inspections. Other ones do too, but other ones will charge. So make sure you ask those questions so you're clear on the situation. But get a pro out there. They'll walk you through everything they find. All right, let's shift gears dramatically and start digging into Benjamin Moore's new color of the year. And let's start that conversation right after this. Home in Progress is brought to you by RepcoLite Paints and Benjamin Moore. Top tier paint, expert advice. Your next project is way easier than you think it's going to be. A couple of weeks ago, Benjamin Moore announced their color of the year for 2026. And I know some of you out there really get into that. You're chomping at the bit. You're sitting on the edge of your seat. You're so pumped because the color of the year is coming out. And I know there's another group of you who couldn't care less. It'd be impossible for you to muster a way to care less. But I've got to dig into it, whether you care less or not. I've got to dig into it on the show because it's my job and it's why they pay me. But I promise you, even if you're one of those people who really don't care about color of the year stuff at all, there's still a lot of good stuff in here. So hang with me. It's going to be worth it for you. All right. The color of the year from Benjamin Moore is called Silhouette. The 2026 color of the year. And according to their marketing materials, it is, and I quote, a rich espresso brown with charcoal undertones. And I know there's a group of you thinking right now, brown? Seriously, brown? I know that's true because I've talked to some of you. Told you it was brown, and I probably should have said, what is the quote? I should have said the color of the year is a rich espresso brown with charcoal undertones. And maybe the people I was talking to wouldn't have said brown, seriously. But either way, brown. It's not a lovely color, even when you hear it said brown. Lavender, that kind of sounds like a pretty color at least, even if it's not your thing. But brown, doesn't sound lovely. It sounds boring. Brown typically has been boring. A lot of us think brown is boring. And, brown is it's just not a nice color, at least not in a lot of our minds. And if that's you, if you're one of those people thinking brown, just pause for a second and maybe reconsider. I'm going to give you a lot of reasons to maybe reconsider. So just put pause on your thoughts for a little bit, ride with me, and then you can hit play again or whatever and see once how you feel about brown now. I think brown gets a bad rap for a number of reasons. One is maybe because so many of us are immature at heart. All right, I'm not going to say more than that, but I think that's part of it. Another reason that brown probably gets a bad rap is that we often associate it with those heavy, dated, 1970s interiors. The brown shag carpet, the brown paneling, the brown everything. Brown was everywhere back then, and maybe you just can't get past that idea. But brown really is, these days, seeing a resurgence. In our interiors, people are more and more and more moving away from all of these grays that we've had through the years, through recent years, going back a ways. We're moving away from those grays and we're moving towards colors that feel warmer and more livable. And brown naturally produces that vibe. So designers like to recommend browns because the right brown can add depth to a room without making it feel heavy. Browns are incredibly flexible. That's another thing that makes them great. You can pair them easily with limestone, walnut, linen, and a huge variety of earthy tones and textures, and different metals. They can be mixed with certain materials or certain colors for a more elevated look. You can mix them with simpler materials for a more rustic look. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of versatility with a brown. But here's the real reason browns are back. People really do want to preserve this connection to nature and the outdoors when it comes to their interior design. We talked about this several weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, with interior designer Andy Yates. Just the whole biophilic design. We want to stay connected to nature, and brown is a very, very natural color. It's incredibly organic. It's literally the color of earth, right? Wood, stone. It's warm, it's grounding, and after years and years and years of cool grays and stark whites that could feel cold and impersonal, people are really craving the warmth that brown brings. So that's why it's back. Now, for those who like flowery marketing language, Benjamin Moore describes Silhouette, the brown for the year, as a sophisticated and warm hue that offers an elegant alternative to black paint, and it pairs easily with a wide range of colors. So that's kind of the whole idea of Silhouette in a nutshell, a sophisticated and warm hue. And let me take a quick detour at this point. There's a lot more I want to say, but I do want to stop for a second because paint companies and designers, and I just did it, we love to throw around the word sophisticated, and we use all kinds of other jargon. But in this instance, I just use the phrase or the word sophisticated when talking about a color. And I want to dig into what that really means, because it sounds good. And, I think a lot of you maybe are rolling your eyes. Why do I need to explain this? But if that's you, if you're rolling your eyes or thinking that sophisticated in reference to a color doesn't need to be explained, well, explain it to yourself for a second in terms of how it relates to color, or explain it to somebody in the room with you. I don't know what you come up with when you try to explain how sophisticated relates to a color, but when I did it, when I tried that little experiment, I didn't have a whole lot. I ended up saying a sophisticated color is something elegant and timeless. It's sophisticated. Cool people would have it. Maybe James Bond. Really, it was ridiculous. It seemed so easy until I did it. I'm not sure what you came up with. And I'm sure you didn't come up with something terrible. What I came up with wasn't terrible. A sophisticated color is something elegant and timeless. But when designers call a color sophisticated, what they're talking about is way more than that. They're actually describing something very, very specific, the color's complexity. A sophisticated color is one that has layers, like an onion. It's not a straight from the tube one-note color. There are subtle undertones that make it shift, depending on the light, what's next to it, the materials around it. Think about it this way. A simple color is kind of like a basic primary color crayon, bright, straightforward, really obvious. Fire engine red, it's just really obvious. A sophisticated color has hints of other colors mixed in, so it's quieter, it's moodier, it's more adaptable. With silhouette, let's make it specific. With silhouette, you've got that espresso brown, but there are charcoal undertones. And here's what's really interesting. It also has violet undertones. So there's a lot going on. In cooler light, those violet undertones are going to come forward. In warmer light, the brown undertones show up more, and it feels cozy and grounded. It's like the color is a little bit alive. It changes throughout the day a little bit. And that complexity, again, is what designers mean when they say a color is sophisticated. It's got nuance. It's balanced. It's responding to its surroundings. And that's what makes it interesting to live with. So when people say a color's sophisticated, now you've got a little more of an idea what they're getting at. And I'm betting it's a little more than what you came up with too. So sometimes it's really good to define some of these jargon terms that we all throw around and think we're talking about something when in fact none of us are really saying anything at all. Okay, now let's move on. Let's talk bigger picture stuff because the choice of silhouette, Benjamin Moore making that choice, it's really a response to something that Benjamin Moore is calling micro-trend fatigue. And honestly, I think of all the things that I want to talk about in regards to silhouette, this part's maybe the most important part. For sure, to me, it's the most interesting part. Now, Andrea Magno from Benjamin Moore, she leads up the Color of the Year search every single year. And we've had her on the show before, and I'm hoping to get her back soon to talk about silhouette. But until she comes back, all I can do is reference her quotes from articles. And in some of those articles, Andrea explains micro-trend fatigue like this, quote, you go on social media and it's this trend, that trend, and it's almost like you can't keep up. But we're seeing almost a reaction to that where people are looking to have good, timeless, classic pieces in their home, end quote. So basically what she's getting at with micro-trend fatigue, we're exhausted. That's the bottom line. The constant churn of trends on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, it's relentless. One day it's all about this particular pink or whatever. Then it's sage green. Then it's terracotta. Then it's, another pink. I don't know. It's coastal grandmother. It never stops. And here's the thing. The reality is people don't want to be repainting their homes every 6 months. People don't want to be repainting their homes every year or every 5 years, for heaven's sake. So choosing silhouette as the color of the year is actually a reaction to the idea of chasing that next trend. I know there are people who hear about this color of the year thing every single year and they think it's a little bit annoying, because it's all about, in their mind, getting a new color scheme in your home every year. That's what Benjamin Moore's after. Actually, the idea behind this year's selection is the opposite. It's about finding and choosing colors that you're not going to regret in 5 years, colors that have staying power, colors that feel timeless. There's this whole anti-trend movement happening right now in design. And instead of following what social media is telling us to do, people are choosing colors that reflect our personality, the comfort that we want in our space. There's a return to craftsmanship, to heritage, to things that feel like they have a soul. And it's funny to me how everything is so cyclical. Just last week, we talked about how the Victorian era, all the architecture of the Victorian era and the way people designed and decorated their homes, all of that started with this deep longing for a return to craftsmanship and beauty and quality. That's what started that whole movement. But then it got out of control and factories started cranking out machine-made decor and all of that. Everybody went nuts. They filled their homes with it. And then all of a sudden, everything comes back again. Pendulum swings. There's a kickback and the arts and crafts movement rises up, calling again for a return to craftsmanship and natural simplistic beauty. Well, we're seeing it again, a reaction against the constant content that we're fed on social media and a longing to see design slow down just a little bit. We want craftsmanship, good quality materials, natural tones, calm and comfortable interiors. And that's what silhouette, Benjamin Moore's color of the year for 2026 represents. It's not a flash in the pan color. It's not going to look dated next year. It's the kind of color that you can build a room around and know that it's still going to be working for you 5, maybe even 10 years from now. If you want to, you can have it working for you that long down the road. It's a neutral, but it's a neutral with depth. And that means it's not boring, it's not bland, but it's also not pushy. It's going to adapt to fit a lot of different vibes. We hinted at it earlier. It can be elegant and it can be rustic. And the only thing that really needs to change is some of the supporting pieces. Accessories, pillows, art, hardware, whatever. Silhouette is a great foundational color. All right, right now I want to look at some of the best ways to incorporate silhouette into your space, in your home. So I think what I'll do is I'll talk about some key spaces and the kind of vibe that you're likely to get with silhouette. And to get started, let's just look at living rooms. If you put it on the walls in your living room, you're going to get a cozy, welcoming space. You could pair it with white trim or off-white trim. I'd probably lean towards off-white trim, and you're going to get a really classic look. You could bring it onto the ceiling and really create a cozy vibe in that space. It's really going to create a welcoming and relaxing space in that area by not necessarily fully color drenching the area, but putting it on the walls and bringing it onto the ceiling. Definitely that's going to create a cozy vibe in there. And if you've ever thought about putting a color on the ceiling, if you ever think about doing that, a couple things that I'll say here. First off, a number of you are probably thinking, why would I put such a dark color on the ceiling? It's going to make the room feel smaller. Well, that's actually, pretty much a design myth. Putting a darker color on the ceiling is, in most instances, going to push the ceiling further away visually. It's going to make the space feel a little more expansive. So don't instantly discount the idea of, putting a color on the ceiling because you're thinking that's going to make the room feel smaller. It's not going to necessarily do that. In fact, most times it won't. Secondly, if you're even remotely thinking about putting a color on the ceiling, use Benjamin Moore's waterborne ceiling paint. I talk about it a fair amount on the show here, but it's a premium ceiling paint that covers and hides really well. Yeah, so it's nice to work with, but most importantly, it stays dead flat even when it's tinted. And that's not the usual case for many, probably most ceiling paints. Most of the time, they're going to pick up some sheen from the colorant that's added to them to get to the color that you want. And when they've got that sheen, it makes them trickier to work with. As you roll them onto a ceiling, you're going to see lap lines and all of that much more readily when there's a sheen on your finish on the ceiling. Benjamin Moore's waterborne ceiling paint is going to stay dead flat no matter what color is in it. And that's going to make it really easy to work with and easy to get great results. So keep that in mind. Silhouette in the dining room. What about that? Well, you could pair it with metals like gold or brass in your lighting or your hardware or whatever. And that's going to create this kind of upscale feel without feeling overdone. And then, because it's so versatile, you could pair it with, or not then, but instead of that, you could pair it with more natural elements and materials and create this cozy, inviting, kind of rustic vibe, like a little hobbit hole. Perfect for kicking back and relaxing and having first and second breakfasts and all of those things in it. So that's where you see the versatility of silhouette with what you pair it with. It's a great choice for bedrooms, of course, because it's going to create that naturally cozy, restful space. Front doors, another place to use silhouette. And it's one of my favorite uses because it's not your everyday first thought. Normally front doors get a little bolder treatment. Reds, greens, mustard yellows, blues, blacks. But opting for silhouette gives the door a warm, welcoming feel. It's inviting. It's a little unusual. And that's kind of fun with a front door. If you're thinking kitchens, silhouette would work beautifully on an island or maybe on your lower cabinets. It's going to add a ton of depth and contrast while keeping that space relatively balanced, especially if you keep those upper cabinets or walls lighter. Exteriors, brown tones like silhouette, they're great outdoors too. You could try it on trim to highlight certain architectural details or even use it as an alternative to black for a softer, more natural look. Now, the thing about brown, and silhouette in particular, is that it's inherently comforting. You pick that up as we're walking through the rooms. There's other rooms we could look at, but what you're getting with silhouette is this comforting tone, a soothing sense of security that it brings to a space. Rich browns work really well in rooms that you want to retire to in the evening. They create, kind of an inviting, relaxing atmosphere. Whether you color drench your space in one shade or layer a selection of similar tones across different surfaces, painting a room brown really creates a cozy feel. That's kind of the bottom line. Now, as many of you know, when Benjamin Moore releases a Color of the Year color, they also release a number of color trends colors, supporting actor colors. And this year there are 7, and they're all designed to work well together. They can kind of be divided into what we maybe could call some pale tones and some mid-tones. So maybe 2 different groups if you want to think about them that way. The pale tones include Swiss Coffee, which is kind of a warm, creamy white. It's already one of Benjamin Moore's best sellers. There's First Crush, which is a neutral with a little bit of blush undertone. So it's got a little bit of a pink vibe to it, but very, very subtle. There's Batik. That's a dusty mauve that really's got a lot more pink to it. That one's not my favorite, gonna be honest. Batik kind of feels like a badunk. I didn't really like that one. But hey, it's just me. If you love it, go for it. Rain Dance, that's another one that we'd kind of lump into the pales, maybe. It's a steely green with gray undertones, really organic, a mineral quality to it. Really nice colors, except for maybe Batik. Sorry, Batik. Sorry, Batik. The midtones, let's just move on. A couple midtones, 3 different midtones. Narragansett Green, it's a deep black and teal. Southwest Pottery, you can picture what that is, a warm terracotta tone. And Sherwood Tan. Now, the idea is that these colors can stand alone or work together. Silhouette pairs beautifully with Swiss Coffee for contrast, or you could use it with Sherwood Tan for a tonal, kind of layered approach. First Crush can soften spaces dominated by deeper tones. On and on and on and on. These aren't just random colors thrown together. That's the main thing to take away from this. They're designed to kind of create a balance. Colors that can layer on top of one another without fighting for attention. So, looking at Benjamin Moore's color trends for 2026, it's all about warmth and connection to nature and comfort and creating a restful space. And like any of the color trends colors throughout the year, the biggest message is to pick whatever color works best for you. Whether silhouette is one of those colors or any of these color trends colors, maybe those are the colors that work for you and they're speaking to you right now. But if they're not, go find what is. That's what it's all about. Find what you love. Just think about what you want to feel when you're in that particular space that you're painting and bring those ideas to RepcoLite. We'll help you find the colors that get you there, and we'll also help you make sure that you're choosing tones that you'll still love in 5 years. All right, that's going to do it for today. But before I wrap it up, I got to talk about that contest quickly. Super simple. Just go to our Facebook and Instagram pages and find our contest post. Or if you want an even simpler path, just go to RepcoLite.com, click the contest banner on the homepage. That's going to provide you with the links that take you directly to the Instagram and the Facebook posts that I'm talking about. Either way, get to those posts and in the comments, tell us which of the 2026 Color Trends colors moves you and which room they move you to paint. For example, one of the comments out there right now is Rain Dance would look great in my laundry room. That's all I'm looking for. So whatever color moves you, whatever room it moves you to paint, leave a comment, and on November 16, I'll draw 4 random winners from everybody who had something to say on those posts. And those 4 people will each win a $250 RepcoLite gift certificate. So again, head to RepcoLite.com, click the contest banner on the homepage, and get your comments in. All right, that's officially going to do it. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to hear more like it, we really encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. You can do that wherever you listen to podcasts, of course. Everybody knows that by now. And also, if you did like the content and you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, that would be great. It helps other people find the show, and that really helps us out. All right, thanks so much for listening. For Home in Progress, I'm Dan Hansen. I'll see you next time.